All right, this video is about talks about determining if two lines are parallel or not. So the last video focused on if these lines are parallel, that means that these angles are congruent or supplementary. Well, now it's going to reverse that process. Now it's going to be like if these angles are supplementary or if these angles are congruent, then I know for a fact that the two lines are parallel. So it's just kind of doing the opposite of what we did last section. So the opposite, when we talk about that, it's called the converse. We're doing the converse of what we did that last section, in the last section. So the learning target, I can write the converse of a theorem and know when two lines are parallel. So the last video focused on these four theorems here. If the two lines are parallel, then their corresponding angles are congruent. Their alternate interior angles are congruent. Their alternate exterior angles are congruent. And their consecutive interior angles are supplementary. So how do I know if two lines are parallel or not? Well, I know for a fact that two lines are parallel if they have the little markings on. So these little markings tell me that those two lines are parallel, but that's not the only way that I know for a fact that the two lines are parallel. So when I look at these, for instance, when the corresponding angles are congruent, then I know for a fact that the lines are parallel. So corresponding angles, if I have two lines cut by a transversal, corresponding angles would be, for instance, this angle number 1 up here, and this angle number, where would that be? Right there. Angle number 2 down there. So their corresponding angles are congruent. If their alternate interior angles are congruent, then I know for a fact that the two lines are parallel. So alternate interior would be like angle number 2 and angle number 3. If those alternate interior angles are congruent, I know for a fact that those two lines are parallel. If their alternate exterior angles are congruent, then I know for a fact that the two lines are parallel. So alternate exterior could be, for instance, this angle number 1, and let's come down here and let's label this one angle number 4 way down here. So when those alternate exterior angles are congruent, I know for a fact that the two lines are parallel. When the same side interior angles are supplementary, then I know for a fact that the two lines are parallel. So same side interior, that would be like angle number 2 and angle number, let's label this with a 6. So if 2 and 6, angle 2 and angle 6, they add up to 180, then I know for a fact that these two lines here are parallel, and that's because they are same side interior angles. All right, so what do I know that these two lines are parallel, M and N? So line M parallel to line N. I do know for a fact that they are parallel, and the reason they're parallel is because their alternate interior angles are congruent. That is the only reason I know that they're parallel, and that's because these two alternate interior angles are congruent. So it's the opposite of what we did in the last video. Are these two parallel? These two here, M and N, I can state that those two lines are parallel, and that's because their alternate exterior angles are congruent. Are these two parallel? Yes, they are. I know for a fact that M and N are parallel, and that's because their corresponding angles are congruent. And are these two parallel? So here in this picture, I cannot state that M is parallel to N. Even though they look like they're parallel, even though they look like some of these angles are congruent to these other angles, I cannot state for a fact that M is parallel to N, and that's because all they're doing is just showing us vertical angles here. Vertical angles are congruent, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be parallel, because the only time I know for a fact that they're parallel is when I have these four back here. Corresponding angles, alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles, or same side interior. Congruent, 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 or they are supplementary. Are these two parallel? These two here, I can't state with 100% certainty that they are parallel. And that's simply because we don't know, we don't have like alternate exterior angles. We don't have alternate interior angles. So I can't state with 100% certainty that these two lines are parallel to each other. And then these here, these two angles are your alternate exterior angles. So since they are alternate exterior angles, I can state with 100% certainty that M is parallel to angle, or excuse me, line M is parallel to line N. So are these two parallel to each other? And I can state with 100% certainty that these two lines are parallel to each other. And that's because these two angles that are shown to us are same side interior angles. And if the same side interior angles add up to 180 degrees, I know for a fact that those two lines are parallel. And this one here, this one takes a little bit of work. These would be alternate exterior angles. So that means that they would have to be congruent. So are these two angles congruent to each other? Well, this would be 100, 1, 1, 4. So this whole thing here is 114 degrees. So those two are congruent to each other. So therefore, I can state, yes, these two lines are parallel because their alternate exterior angles are congruent. Are these two parallel? Well, again, this might take a little bit of work, but let's see, these would be same side interior angles. So this angle here and this angle here are same side interior angles. So same side interior angles, if they add up to 180, I know for a fact that A and B are parallel. So these two would have to add up to 180. So this is 120 degrees up here, 6, 7, 8. They total 180. So therefore I know for a fact that yes, they are parallel because their same side interior angles are supplementary. And this one here, what would those be? Those would be alternate exterior angles. We have this one out here and we have this one in here, alternate exterior. Let's see if this one's 106. This one would be 9, 10, 100, 103. So this is no, because alternate, this is supposed to be exterior. Alternate exterior angles are not congruent. Which lines are parallel? So if 1 and 5 are congruent, here's 1, here's 5, those are corresponding angles. So C would be parallel to D. Line C parallel to line D. If 11 and 14, let's see, here's 11, here's 14. Those are alternate interior angles. So again, I could state with 100% certainty that C is parallel to D. So 4 and 6, these two, if those are same side interior. So if they add up to 180, that means C would have to be parallel to D. And if 5 and 8. So here's 5 and here's 8. Those are vertical angles. Vertical angles are congruent, but it doesn't tell us anything about parallel lines. So this last one, not enough information. There's nothing we know for certain by simply knowing that 5 is congruent to 8. And there's the answers again. So C is parallel to D, C is parallel to D, C parallel to D, and number 4, not enough information. What value of X would make these two lines parallel? Well, if these two lines were parallel, that means that these alternate exterior angles would have to be congruent. So if they're congruent, that means that their measurements equal each other. That means that the measurement of X would have to equal whatever this measurement is up here. So that's what that tells us. That's that logical thought process that leads us to this conclusion. The alternate exterior angles means that they're congruent, means that their measurements equal. So if I set them equal to each other, I can add X to both sides. 2X equals 90, which means that X would have to be 45. So X is 45 degrees. Or this angle would be 45 degrees. This angle up here would be 45 degrees. X would equal 45. All right. And that concludes everything dealing with the converse of the theorems that we worked with in the last video. It would be a good idea to go through the practice, the worksheet that's posted. And when you go through those, get familiar with these four different theorems, these four different converse theorems. Make sure you're familiar with those so that you can easily identify corresponding angles, alternate exterior angles, alternate interior angles, and same side interior angles.